You know, most of us football fans had that sad moment in our lives when we realized we'll never be a football player no matter how much we try. For many of us, it's just a lack of talent to make it in the big stage. But hey, what if there was another way to become a professional footballer? Maybe the dream isn't as dead as you think it is. Maybe you don't have to depend on your footballing skills to make it in football. What if being a charismatic and talented conman can pave the way for a long career in football? And not just any level of football, I'm talking about the top level, with top teams. Well, today's man of the hour spent more than a decade deceiving clubs and players alike of his footballing abilities. Meet Carlos Kaiser, who conned himself into signing for historical clubs like Flamengo, Vasco Da Gama, and Botafogo, among others. Kaiser was good in so many things, but football wasn't one of them, so he faked multiple injuries in order to not play an official game and keep the facade going. Yes, Kaiser wanted to live the lifestyle of a footballer, but without actually playing football. And guess what? This charade went on for more than a decade, some say 26 years, while some modest numbers say just 11 years. Yep, only 11 years. That's still an incredible number for someone who couldn't even play football to save his life. And that's not even the most impressive part. The mad thing about his story is that he didn't play a single game in his career. Not even one. And guess what? Despite never playing a single match, he still managed to get a red card. Our boy here has more red cards than appearances. That's mad. Honestly, I can't help but to be impressed at this point. All those major clubs in Brazil on your CV and not a single match in your long career. Dude, that's like being in Manchester City, Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Chelsea in your career and not play even one professional game. You almost have to respect that. But the question is, how did Kaiser pull this off? How did he end up convincing all these clubs to sign him for their teams? Well, stick around to find out. Right, so Brazilian football has given us so many legends, from Pelé to Zico to Romario to Carlos Kaiser. Oh, you never heard of him? Well, you will in this video. Let me tell you one thing, he played in France, he played in Mexico, hell, he even played for the Brazilian national team. Or did he? Well, when he was young, he wanted to play professional football, but without actually playing football. Of course, he claims that he had skills, but decided not to use them. Well, come on, dude. Come on. Are you kidding me? Anyway, he signed his first contract with the Mexican club, Puebla. Legend has it that he impressed them during a training session, although not by his football skills, but just by his raw fitness. That being said, they soon realized their mistake and his contract was over without playing a single game for them. That gave Kaiser an idea. What if I join a club and fake an injury? Dude, you're a genius. That gave him a blueprint, one that he would follow for the rest of his career, even when he signed for Brazil's major clubs, which, if I could sum it up in one sentence, it's avoid kicking a ball at all cost. But that alone doesn't really get you anywhere, does it? Well, this is where things get really interesting. After returning to Brazil, Kaiser made powerful friendships in the nightlife scene. This included professional footballers and journalists, which included some of Brazil's top footballers, literally the who's who of the Brazilian football at the time, with the football players putting in the good words with the managers and the journalists creating fake stories in the newspapers about his career. In one case, a newspaper article reported that he had such a good time at Puebla that he was even invited to become a Mexican citizen to play for the national team. Yup, that was the extent of the fabrications. The clubs would just believe these stories and sign him on short contracts. After he joined, he would say that he's low on match fitness, so he would only do fitness drills for weeks. Well, until he could pull off a fake hamstring injury or something like that. Just to remind you, we're talking about the 80s here, so we didn't have a ton of medical technology to verify the injuries, which at the time worked a treat for this guy. He would just run down the short-term contract and start repeating the same process in the next club as well. So naturally, he needed transfers often, where his network of players and journalists put up the good word for him and the cycle would repeat at the next club over and over again. And by the way, speaking of recommendations, I've done a video of how someone conned himself into playing in the Premier League while pretending to be George Weah's cousin. Feel free to check that video out, but only after finishing this one. If he ever kicked the ball, he would have been exposed as a fraud and, well, unceremoniously kicked out of football for good. For quite a few times, he actually paid youth team players to tackle him on purpose, just so that he'd be sidelined with an injury. He even bribed the doctor that one club hired to cure him just to make up fake injuries about him again. But his story doesn't even end here. He would actually move to Europe in the mid-80s to a French club. And before we talk about what happened to our boy Kaiser in France, a lot of time goes into making these videos. So your like and comments really mean a lot to me, and it really helps out the YouTube algorithm as well, as this is a young channel. So, as he arrived in France, his new club arranged a training session in front of fans to celebrate his arrival. Because, hey, he was a big deal, a top Brazilian player. Well, at least by reputation. Not one to let fans down. Instead of playing badly and ruining his image as a top player, he spent the entire training session kicking the ball in the stands and kissing the badge. Obviously by now, you get the drill. Without playing a single minute for the club, he returned back to Brazil. And guess what? His journalist friends wrote an article about how he was a top scorer at his French club. And of course he signs for a new club again. But this is where something interesting happened. At his next club, the club owner got so tired of him just training that he told the coach to play his star signing regardless. So he was actually put on the bench for a game. At 2-0 down, he was sent to warm up. His destiny was getting out of his hand. He instantly knew if he entered the game, his credibility as a top player would be gone for good. And with it, his life as a playboy footballer would be over. Surely this could not be allowed to happen. So what did he do? Well, after being provoked by the fans, he jumped to the other side of the fence and had a physical fight with the fans. After seeing this, he was red carded by the referee. To this day, he's the only football player that I know that has more red cards than official appearances. And you know what's funny? The fact that no one could even verify if the fans provoked him in the first place or not. After the match, Kaiser lied to the owner that the fans were calling the club owner a thief. Not only he was forgiven, but he was also rewarded with a 6-month extension on his contract as well. That day, just like every other day, Kaiser lived on instinct, and at the moment, he didn't live for tomorrow. Hell, he didn't even live for later today. And I think this is a good representation of his career, or at least what looked like a career. His whole career was a never-ending hustle of a few small and instinctive scams, which made up one giant scam. And yet, he's very much loved by his teammates and former colleagues. Even to this day, they mention him in good spirit. You know, it would be interesting if such a thing can happen today in the modern football, where any kind of information can be verified just by a simple Google search. Imagine if he signed for your club today. The first thing you're gonna do is look up in YouTube for highlights of his football skills. Hell, maybe even look up for some analysis about what kind of striker he is. It would really be interesting to see how he would navigate through the watchful eyes of the internet. Kaiser didn't have much footballing talent. Well, I don't even know if there was any talent. But through powerful networking, deceit, and an unbelievable charisma, he was able to con his way to some of the most powerful clubs in Brazil. I guess there is a way to become a top professional football player without any talent. So, what do you think about the story of Kaiser? Personally, I find it quite odd that the story of Kaiser is lost to history. If this happens today in the modern age, the internet would literally set him on fire. Especially in an age where people are obsessed by things like stats and football philosophy. Although we're talking about a con man here, I think we have to appreciate the story of Carlos Kaiser. Not the man, but the story, because the likes of Kaiser will never happen in our modern football. Oh wait. Okay, I guess, never mind. Is there a football story that you'd like me to cover in a video? Let me know in the comment section below, but be nice to each other. I'm Football Drawn, and I like to tell football stories with comic and drawings. If you enjoyed this video, check out the rest of the channel as well.